November 28th Planning Commission meeting. We have one commissioner that will be joining us a little bit late. Okay. We'll start, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could rise and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'll take roll call. Can you guys hear me? There we go. I'll take roll call. Commissioner Inga,
Here.
Commissioner Newman,
Present.
Vice Chair Heschler,
I'm here.
Chair Keldorf,
Here.
and Commissioner Magai is running late.
Thank you.
We have quorum.
Right. We will start with public communications. Anybody wishing to come up and address the dais about an item not on the public hearing agenda, now's the time. Seeing none, we'll close public communications. Eduardo, any written communications?
No written communications for anything on the agenda or non-agenda items.
Thank you. And nothing on the consent calendar. So we will move into public hearings, the first being the exterior renovation of the swim stadium. And we'll start, I'm assuming, with the staff presentation.
Yes.
Certificate of appropriateness.
Yes, that is a new one.
I need one of those.
Yeah, I do. Need somebody to walk around behind me.
So yes, thank you, Chair and Commissioners. So I'll be taking over for Maria, who's been out. So what's before you today is a certificate of appropriateness for the plunge. Just to give a little bit of background on the actual facility itself, the building was constructed back in the 1940s with an modern architectural, typically described as or referred to as an Art Deco style, which was popular at the time in the 40s and the post-war era. The building and the swim stadium has served the community for well over 75 years. Although it's referred locally as the Plunge, the facility was renamed in 1973 to honor the water polo and swim coach Urho Saari. I'm assuming I'm saying that correctly. So, and then in 1994, the City Council adopted a resolution designating the structure or the facility a quote unquote cultural resource. Now that's important because that is the reason why we're here tonight to review this certificate. So, although the entire renovation includes both interior and exterior improvements and upgrades, the reason we are here tonight before the PC Planning Commission is because of the exterior renovations. So, as part of the overall project, it does include replacing the entry steps and ramps into the facility. New entry doors will be installed from what they have now. To something that's a little bit more open, has some glass panes and double pane windows on those doors, really opening up the entry as you could see here. Other improvements include energy efficient light fixtures and windows, repair and paint the exterior concrete finish, especially the man and women that are kind of carved out into the facade of southern facade of the building will be upgraded and repainted and finished so that it looks great again and reliving what the architectural integrity of that building was supposed to be. Again, windows are going to be replaced. There will be some new rooftop mechanical equipment that will be on the north side at the rear of the building and ultimately screened with material that will be painted to match the facility. And then the next biggest thing is a new transformer box, which will be located in the front in the public near the public right-of-way. That is something that the SoCal Edison has mandated in order to provide the electricity necessary for the facility. So, ultimately the proposed exterior building, it does include repairing the architectural features and upgrades to the facility, and ultimately it will conform with new building code regulations and safety requirements as well. So now, since the building is designated a cultural resource, The municipal code requires that before any kind of construction, renovation, sorry, someone's trying to get into our Zoom. Okay. So before any kind of renovation is to occur, to such a resource, a certificate of appropriateness be issued, and that authority in granting the certificate lies here with this body at the Planning Commission. So now, what are those findings? So similar to what you are typically accustomed to, conditional use permits, AUPs, variances, environmental findings, as you all recall, whenever there's a discretionary application, there are these findings. Same thing with the certificate of appropriateness. Now up on the screen here, these are the two findings that the commission must make in order to grant the certificate of appropriateness. And by and large, they deal with the exterior architectural features of the building, ensuring that those are kept and the integrity is kept, so that you know, you're not coming in with architectural elements and features that don't match and stray away from the integrity of the building. And then also in relation to the to how well it fits in with the neighboring area. So specifically with these two findings, staff's analysis has determined that the first finding can be made in the sense that the doors and windows, they'll remain architecturally compatible. The mechanical equipment will be screened and color matched to be consistent with the building. The light fixtures, they are of a type of element that still enhance the character of the Art Deco movement, if you will. And then with regards to the second finding of the special character, again, the renovations do preserve the aesthetic character. There's no new or inconsistent architectural elements that will be introduced to the building or to the area. So it doesn't change its historic significance. And in relationship to its compatibility, it will continue to be compatible with the adjacent school, which was oddly enough designed by the same architect that designed this building. So it will continue to be compatible with that building as well. So with that, the staff has concluded that the appropriate findings to issue the certificate of appropriateness can be made in a positive manner, and therefore recommends that the Planning Commission approve and adopt the associated resolution.
Thank you, Eduardo. I think my only question, and I know we've talked about this before, it's a locally historic designated property, but that doesn't put it on a state or a national registry or anything like that.
That's correct, yes. Yeah, it is a local cultural resource.
Cultural resource,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. And it does fall under our section of our code, but no, it has nothing to do with the state or federal, because those have their own criteria and they also have their own limitations,
Right.
Which the commission or council has not directed us to pursue.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Questions?
I have a quick question about the interior. Of course, that's going through the city council, and there's a lot of discussion now about the interior and what it's going to look like and do. As far as the exterior, I think it's great. The upgrades that have been suggested this evening, is that just something that the planning department has come up with? Or is this in conjunction with the designer or potential designer? The choice of the light fixtures, the choice of colors, that kind of thing. Is that something that we've done internally?
Yes, we've coordinated with our Public Works Department in terms of looking at the types of elements and trying to ensure that whatever is used out there is consistent with the architectural integrity. We also have had the city's historic preservation consultant take a look at it and has also concluded that it won't detract from the existing architectural style.
And these costs, not that it's a concern, I'm just curious more than anything, are all in conjunction with the overall budget that's happening with the discussion at city council level?
Correct, they would stay
Okay.
within the budget established.
Okay. That's it.
I have a question about the typography on here, and I realize that's probably just a SketchUp model or something that you're limited to what typeface. I would say if we are going for period accuracy, the original typeface that was on there was more of a deco style. It was spaced out more. The word spacing's a little funky on that. So if you, in fact, in that same presentation, you can see the original plunge typography. So I just want to make sure that, yeah, it's in, even the black and white one there. You see how it's kind of spread out? It's also an Art Deco typeface, so the curves, the O's are perfectly round. I would just say that if you could reinstate that typography, and that is elsewhere. That's on the library, that same typeface. It's on the high school. So it's just a small detail, but I think kind of an important one.
Okay. We can most certainly work with our public works staff and the consultant to come up with something that's more of that period. But yeah, you're right. I think ultimately it is, you know, a rendering, and yeah, we'll look at that a little more in detail
Yeah,
based
I
on your
figured
direction.
it was the rendering. I just didn't want it installed.
No,
and
that's
said,
a good- yeah,
oh, wow,
that's a good catch.
You guys used Helvetica or Arial.
Okay, no, that's a good catch, and we'll make sure we take a look at that.
Great. And then I have another question. I know we're talking about the exterior, but I guess I just want to go on record saying, you know, all the plan sets were in here, showing the interior, showing the restrooms. The city went to great pains to build the Weisburn pool, and it's beautiful, but the locker rooms suck. They're just, and I mean that with the highest regard. The materials are nice, the finishing's nice, but the layout is not. I don't think a swimmer designed it. And so I guess I just want to make sure that, and it was kind of hard to see on the plans what was showers, what was bigger, maybe ADA showers. But if you could please incorporate swimmers into the design process, it's really important.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm a swimmer, and
Okay.
it's awkward when you're standing around with a bunch of other naked people, and there's no place to put your stuff, and it's like you don't know where to go. So, anyway,
Go for
please-
heated towels too, Jay, while you're at it.
There you go. Bring in the
Floors.
spa thing.
I heard,
Right.
were you telling me that the water pools in the,
It does pool. I
no
haven't- I
pun
haven't swam
intended, but yeah,
I
in the
haven't-
locker room, that there's water that doesn't drain.
So it's poorly sloped.
It's poorly sloped,
Right.
yes.
Interesting. So,
This former swimmers never step foot in there, so.
yeah, she's Michelle's
My
a
bad.
former swimmer also.
That's true, right. Yeah, I'll definitely pass that on to our
Great.
staff.
Thank you.
Public
Otherwise,
works
it's great.
I like it too.
Okay. Well, thank you. At this time, we'll open it up to public communications.
I guess we jumped the gun on that.
Not necessarily, no, just question for staff, maybe. Okay, we'll close public communications. Any further comments from the dais?
None. I will make a motion to adopt resolution number 2939, conditionally approving environmental assessment number EA 1343, and to approve the certificate of appropriateness number CA 23-01.
I second.
And I'll take votes. Commissioner Inga,
Aye.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heschler,
Yes.
Chair Keldorf.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Now are we supposed to vote on the certificate of appropriateness for Jay?
I will not win that.
Save that for our continued business item. Okay, moving on to conditional use permit for a new major wireless communication facility at 216 East Imperial Avenue.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm gonna go ahead and have Jasmine present this. As you know, this is a request for a wireless facility, and she'll go into a little bit more detail in terms of historically what the property was used for, and then ultimately how it relates to this particular application. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Jasmine.
It's up to you.
Chair, Commissioners, I'll be presenting Environmental Assessment 1349 and Conditional Use Permit 23-02 for the site 216 East Imperial Avenue. There we go. In 2001, the Planning Commission approved Environmental Assessment 529 and Conditional Use Permit 00-08 to allow Sprint to operate a major wireless communication facility at 216 East Imperial Avenue. The facility was later dismantled by Sprint earlier this year in March, and now Dish Wireless is proposing to reinstate coverage at the site area. The site is located at the southwest corner of Imperial Avenue and Eucalyptus Drive, and it is in the multi-residential family zone, which is our R3. It is developed with a legal non-conforming three-story apartment complex on a sloping lot, and its height ranges from 34 feet to 40 feet. The proposed site is similar to the previously operated facility by Sprint, and there are a few distinctions. One of them is that it will host less antenna panels, a total of 6. Previously, it was a total of 12. It will continue to utilize existing structures on site to provide screening for the facility, and the project requires a conditional use permit because of its height. The project is not going to introduce a new use to the site or new structures, and the overall land use is not going to change. Reinstating a wireless communication facility at the site will provide an increase and improved connectivity for the communications network for the years to come. The photo simulations before you confirm that the facility will not be visible from the public view or the neighboring streets or neighborhoods. It is not visible along Imperial Avenue, and it is located in an area that is already developed with no alteration or interference for its current and existing use. The nearest major facility is about a quarter-mile away from this site. As previously indicated, the proposed facility is going to utilize existing structures on site to provide, it's going to use existing enclosures on site, such as a 5-foot-high roof parapet wall and a 6-foot-high ground wall enclosure for the ground equipment. The existing enclosures will continue to be compatible with the building and its surrounding uses. Staff does recommend approval and adoption of Resolution 2943. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Jasmine. Any questions for staff? Yes?
So this is a wireless, even though it's Dish, it's a wireless thing that benefits the entire community. It's not just like a Dish network for that apartment complex.
Correct.
Is that right? So they're using the height of that building to broadcast their stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have anything, but open, no. Okay, thank you. We'll open public communications. First right goes to the applicant. Sure, come on up and tell us your name, where you're from. Thank you.
My name is Maverick Becker. I work for Dish Wireless. We are the project managers, engineers, and consultants for the project. My address is 12526 High Bluff Drive, San Diego, California. I'd just like to thank staff for their support on the project. We've been working closely on this for the past month or so. Just a brief history on Dish Wireless. They've been in business for about 40 years. Started out selling satellite services. They're a publicly traded company listed on the market, ticket number DISH. And Dish Wireless was part of a Sprint and T-Mobile merger that happened in 2020, as the FCC is encouraging competition on a federal level. There were conditions as part of this merger, one of those being to encourage competition among the main 3 big wireless players, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. So now the federal government is introducing Dish Wireless as the 4th nationwide carrier. Second condition was that the FCC has mandated Dish to deploy their network frequencies and licenses and have set certain thresholds for that. First was to cover 70% of the United States by June 2023. We have met that, and Dish has invested $30 billion in doing that. The next threshold is 2025. That is to cover 75% of the U.S. That's going to be the hardest part, and that's why we're here today. So the purpose of this project is to provide initial coverage to the area. To be clear, this is not an upgrade from 4G to 5G or 3G to 4G. We have no coverage in El Segundo, and this is the initial rollout. It's called a Greenfield Network Build-Out. And so we're investing time, money, and engineering to comply with the city code. And that's our objective, and why I'm here today is to meet the design criteria and also take into consideration feedback from the public. We did send out public notices to the surrounding areas, and I've offered myself as a representative to reach out to if anyone had questions As of today, we have not received anything. But I would just like to speak on, why we selected the site. First, when we look for site locations, we look for co-location opportunities. That's where sites where wireless equipment already exists. Next, we would be looking for properties in industrial and commercial zones. These buildings here typically have high-rise rooftops, allows us to cover a larger area and doesn't require us to build as many sites within a certain area. This location is zoned for multifamily residential use, but we first identified the property because it was the site of a previous Sprint wireless facility. That was decommissioned in 2022. Sprint has removed their equipment, and most likely reason for that is because T-Mobile had a site nearby, and once the merger occurred, they had overlapping coverage there, so no longer needed the site. These instances are occurring across Los Angeles, and Dish Wireless is looking to take over these decommissioned sites. There are 3 other planned Dish Wireless sites in El Segundo in various stages of entitlements. I'm working on this particular project, however. And I'd also just like to speak on the existing enclosures and the height limit. The existing roof parapet enclosure and as well as the ground-based enclosure, both of which were utilized by Sprint. I would just like to make it clear, we are not proposing to modify or alter the existing roof structure or ground enclosure. There will be no change structurally or visibly from the public view. And just for the height limit, the zone height limit is 32 feet. And the existing height of the apartment complex is almost 40 feet. But again, our development will not increase that height, and we will remain at that 40 feet. But yeah, that is all I would like to speak on, and happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's just a curiosity that doesn't really have anything to do with the approvals, but how do you reduce the number of antennas from 12 to 6 without affecting coverage?
Yeah, so that was Sprint may have needed that capacity for our initial rollout. Our capacity is we only need 6 antennas, and we did make some adjustments. We typically like to have 6-foot antennas, but we made a mitigation for 4-foot antennas. That does reduce our coverage a bit, but we wanted to make sure we're applying with the city code. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
What is the typical range of one of those antennas?
Yeah, you can, there's a coverage map in the staff report that kind of shows the coverage there, but it's typically a mile, maybe radius there. Mm-hmm.
So is Dish cobbling together different antennas around the South Bay, around Los Angeles?
Yes, for El Segundo in particular, this project was to cover the northwest portion of El Segundo and also possibly reach some of the airport to the north. Mm-hmm. And then the other 3 planned projects are, in the other areas to cover those.
And I have a quick question about the installation. Is there much to it? Do you, like an air conditioning unit, do you need like a big, something to bring equipment on top of the building? Is there any disruption to the people that live there?
Well, since we are utilizing, existing structures, that does reduce a lot of the disruption to tenants that there might be, but... It's
temporary, I realize, but is it a like one-day thing, or is it
No, it would not be a one-day thing. Typically, construction's six months or so.
It's a long time. Yeah.
I'm speaking vaguely on that. I'm not totally sure, but...
I know you sent letters to the residents, but I mean, it seems to me that, I don't know if you're bringing cranes or, you got work crews out in front. I mean, do the residents understand what's coming? I mean, do they know that you're going to be there for 6 months?
Yes, and we're complying. There's a adequate space for construction vehicles in the driveway there, as you can see in the staff report as well.
So is the plan to come back 3 more times individually for each site? Was there, I see you nodding, was there like a programmatic approval that we could have done, or just to be more efficient?
If I'm not mistaken, each site is gonna require its own individual conditional use permit, so we're gonna have to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, and also to add to that, it also depends on where they're gonna go, what's existing out there. Because there may be a situation where one of them doesn't require a CUP, but it's really, site-specific and project-specific, and that really dictates the process ultimately.
Gotcha, okay. Yeah, I think I'd be most concerned for the residents that have to be there, you know, they don't get a personal benefit from this going on the rooftop unless they get a dish network, right? I'm assuming that the building owner's leasing it to you guys.
Yes, correct. We have acquired a lease with the building owner.
Right, right. So, you know, I guess as long as the residents have some sort of mechanism to keep in touch with the city if they have issues, you know, I trust you guys will be good neighbors while you're installing that stuff. So, yeah, I guess just be respectful to people that live there, and I'll feel better about that.
Yep.
Good point. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you.
driving from San Diego.
Of course, thank you.
Any further public communications on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public communications. Any further comments or questions from the dais?
Nope, I think we've covered it as far as being concerned for the residents that live there, as we say. They'll be mindful of that.
Yeah, but I think it's good to have, you know, wireless options, you know, where we're kind of like
Competition.
be beholden to, you know, what's out there. So it's good to have options at different price points or what have you. So
Right.
it's a good project.
I guess a question I have is, I mean, you mentioned that, and I know we closed it with, you mentioned that typically this is done in industrial areas, or I know we've approved other towers at Chevron, and they're kind of away from residential. And so are there lots of antennas out there that are in residential areas that we just kind of don't know about, and we're all kind of living with them?
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, the one that's about a quarter mile away is in a church, right? Or the mortuary. Yes, in the mortuary, and you couldn't tell it's there.
Right.
So that's what we're going for.
The high steeple.
Yes. That is the goal.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I'll receive a motion to approve.
I will move to adopt resolution number 2943, conditionally approving environmental assessment number EA 1349 in the CUP 23-02.
And I second.
And I'll take votes. Commissioner Inga,
Yes.
Commissioner Newman,
Aye.
Commissioner Magai,
Aye.
Vice Chair Heschler,
Aye?
and Chair Kildorf.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, next up, continued business. Appoint 2 planning commissioners to the South Bay Bicycle Master Plan and other multimodal city initiative subcommittee. And we continued this from the last meeting because our favorite cyclist was absent.
He was cycling.
That's right.
Well, I clearly, with his approval, would like to nominate Jay Heschler.
I would second that. And I don't know how this works. This is my first time. Are we just having a discussion then about whomever else would like to sign themselves up for this subcommittee? And maybe staff could educate me on what this is.
What's the commitment? What is
Yeah.
it? Yes.
And
What's
me, if
the
I'm gonna
role?
be.
No,
here.
you're good. Bicycle. What else do you need to know?
That's right, it's like riding a bike.
Very generally, yes, it's good to get a feel for folks, because sometimes someone might get nominated who can't or isn't really willing to do it. So it's good to feel around and discuss who would be up for it.
Okay.
Who else would be up for it?
Well, can we? Let's have
And then I
Michael
think
maybe
staff
tell
has
us
details
what will be
on-
expected.
Chair, I'll go ahead and provide a little bit of background by way of an item brought to the city council through Councilmember Baldino and responsive to some remarks and comments and feedback received from our vice chair regarding the work that was completed specifically regarding work completed on El Segundo Boulevard that was absent improvements, including striped bicycle lanes or other pedestrian or bicycle-oriented improvements that had previously been contemplated not only by the commission but also by the council when the city adopted its master bike plan that was sponsored through the South Bay Council of Governments, as well as the city's adopted climate action plan, also sponsored by the South Bay Council of Governments. And there are other multimodal driven documents or policies that the city has in its existence through the circulation element and the general plan. There's particular improvements daylighted in the Smoky Hollow specific plan, as well as the downtown specific plan, and even the recent draft of the downtown specific plan includes multimodal suggested or recommendations, right? And so there was concern that these improvements are happening, and in the past, staff had conveyed to the commission and council that when these improvements are recommended, there may not be a funding mechanism available in that moment, but in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years, there will be a time when we resurface it, or we have some capital improvement project that we're gonna invest in, strip it down and relay asphalt and do a slurry seal, and the staff shared at those times that would be the time some of these improvements would happen as funding is available. And so that did not happen for the El Segundo Boulevard, or it has not happened yet. And so this has resulted in this idea of having two planning commissioners establish it could be annual, it could be ongoing, we could figure out what the recommendations are and then disband it. But the idea is that there's two planning commissioners who sit on the subcommittee to help identify a process, a mechanism to ensure that these types of things don't continue to happen. And that might look like vetting the capital improvement projects before it goes to council, and then making recommendations. It might mean developing some sort of internal policy to ensure that those things are considered prior to implementation. It's not exactly spelled out what it might mean. So these two individuals will help work with staff to determine what we can do collectively between these two commissioners, or even a commission as a whole, staff and council, to make sure that these things are being caught in the future. And the first order of business will probably be looking at El Segundo Boulevard. The project has not formally been adopted yet as complete, and we do have a quote from a third-party consultant that has offered to look at it much more comprehensively than the Smoky Hollow specific plan or the master bike plan looked at it, because those were just sort of surface level recommendations. You have X amount of curb to curb width, and we think you could do X, Y, Z in it, but they didn't actually go measure. And so we have a proposal from a firm who will go do a comprehensive analysis of what will actually fit and maintain the safety of the drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists on El Segundo, and make recommendations from there. There's a cost associated with that. So this subcommittee probably first thing would be looking at that and then making a recommendation to council. Do we want to do this, or do we sort of wave the white flag on this one and then focus on the next one that comes down the pipeline? So today we're we're looking for two subcommittee members, and Councilmember Baldino suggested that our Vice Chair Heschler would sit on the subcommittee, and so we leave it up to you for another appointee.
How would this roll into, like, we just did a downtown specific plan discussion, and that was a big part of it. Do you envision this being advisory to that, or talking about implementation there?
I think this could be advisory to that. It can materialize in a lot of different things. I mean, that it's not always great to just have a standing subcommittee in perpetuity from a commission or even with council. And so it would be nice when we first sit down as a subcommittee to kind of identify what are our sort of short-term, long-term. Is this a 1 year, 2 year? Is it a couple months? Based on what those milestones are. I think the commission as a whole could serve as a great advisory in this case, and maybe that's something that the subcommittee looks at, is making that recommendation. But this right now is just sort of a first line of defense from an advisory standpoint. And they would certainly look at the downtown specific plan, especially since it's in draft form. It's ready to come back to everybody in the next couple of months here. And so that would also be a priority for this subcommittee as well.
Could the commission as a whole provide that advisory position? Is that,
Doesn't that become a Brown Act? Is that
Well,
the
so
way-
the commission as a
it'd
whole
be
is
in an
gonna
open-
become advisory when the document comes to the commission as a whole.
so you'd have the
So
advisory, you'd have.
this would be an
okay.
advisory to the advisory.
Oh, wow, okay.
A counselor for the counselor. But you.
But we're not sure if it's a couple of months to begin to implement, to figure out how to navigate it, how to navigate so that it's written, so that it's, so those things don't go without being implemented, if there's going to be changes. I mean, in other words, let's say we want bike lanes, and it didn't happen in El Segundo Boulevard, and so now we're having to, you know, carry the costs of looking at it and then either restriping it or making it, integrating it. So if the advisory committee would have beforehand said, we want to be sure that every time you look at change of Main Street or whatever street that we want to create bike lanes, that's kind of what we're saying. That's kind of what that's a possible outcome of an advisory committee.
It could be, it's like a safety net to make sure that desired policy or goals that were spoken about maybe 10, 15 years ago and staff wasn't
So it may
here.
not be a 1 year or 2 year thing. It could just be several months just to create a
A
roadmap.
process.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. I mean, it's, and I give Michael credit for bringing this to the forefront along with Ryan Baldino, but, you know, it's almost like if there was a system of checks in place, and the goal is not to put bike lanes everywhere. The goal is simply to look at the master plan, say, all right, you know, these make sense. And I think also the master plan is up for review in places. You know, El Segundo Boulevard does have some constraints. It pinches down tight. You know, it's on the master plan as a bike lane. I guess you could easily carte blanche say, all right, that's gonna be redone. Where are the bike lanes? Those weren't done. But it probably would have made a lot of sense to do a tighter review and say, bring it back to the planning commission, to the council, and say, hey, we know this is on the bicycle master plan, but maybe this isn't the best thing here. And at least we would have had a chance to review it.
Yeah.
But no, that never happened.
Because it's a highway, essentially.
Well, but yeah, I mean, it's a highway because people, it's, you know, 35, 40 miles an hour and everybody drives 70. So, but yes, I think maybe what Michael's describing is just simply a system to put into place to say, all right, when something comes up, it should go through this process, so.
And where you prioritize maybe the staging of it, what happens first? When we have, you know, this pool of money, is this where you would most like to see us implement it? Stage
Right.
1, stage 2,
Well,
stage
I
3?
agree completely with the idea of when a road is resurfaced, that's the time to do it. I mean, it's basically paint and stripes, so.
And you know, so just to provide additional context along those notes, and I think the example you gave is great, because El Segundo Boulevard and the circulation element actually calls for 3 lanes in each direction, plus, you know, a median, and, you know, looking at it now, you know that there's not enough space, right? But there's also a master bike plan that calls for a class 2 bike lane. And so to Commissioner Heschler's point, the idea is to look at it and determine if everything can't fit, what do we want to fit? What do we prioritize, and make that recommendation? And what had transpired was staff at the time made a determination that this was really sort of a routine maintenance project, and in their minds, it didn't trigger this thought of these other potential improvements. And so this would be a process to allow either the subcommittee or even the commission as a whole to say, okay, we know that it's just resurfacing, but can we take the time to at least study 1 bike lane, 2 bike lanes in each direction, you know, whatever it might be. And maybe, you know, I don't think we want 3 traffic lanes in each direction anymore. So it's an opportunity to start having that conversation, because the circulation element's at least a decade plus old, or 2 decades old, I think. Yeah, 2 decades old. And so our priorities are different today. And so a lot of the goals are the same, but it's an opportunity to figure out, in order to satisfy these goals, what's the strategy we're taking. And so ideally, this subcommittee can make some recommendations on how to resolve that in the short term, and maybe it's something that comes back to this commission as a whole as well.
So this is more than bike lanes, right? As I read, just the
Multimodal.
Yeah, that's why I included multimodal. A lot of the conversation was very specific to bike lanes, but there's a lot of components to it. There's the local travel network that has been discussed, and that inlays with this as well. But it is multimodal. There's
Okay,
transit.
That's good to know, because, the multimodal transportation is like, that's a thing for the city of the future, right? We can't just rely on cars, whether that be bus, train, ride shares, or golf carts, or even like micro-mobility, like scooters, or even e-bikes.
Shame.
Yes, the e-bike, so, because that gets car trips off the road, right? So, and that's very important to me. And so, I'd like to be a part of, I'd like to volunteer to be the second person on this with Jay, if that's okay with the rest of you. That was terrible.
That was a terrible.
Do it again.
Get that on record.
Oh, it
Also
is.
get the TV to edit
That is great. I appreciate your interest. What is our process for, do we take a motion on appointing? Do we vote on this?
Yeah, I would entertain a motion from someone not nominated, and then it should be to create and appoint. And I would recommend adding a lifeline of no longer than a year to ensure that it's temporary in nature, and come 365 days later, we can revisit where we're at.
And before you make a nomination, or, so is the process that, Michael, the city you guys would start the process, and then we would come meet with you and kind of go through stuff, or would you be relying on us to start?
We'll start the process. We'll reach out, we'll set up a time to meet, and start mapping out what the next at least 365 days look like,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
You wanted to know what you were getting
Yeah,
into?
absolutely. Due diligence, the only due diligence I have.
Okay.
Well, I will move to appoint Kevin McGuy and Jay Heschler to the South Bay Bicycle Master Plan Multimodal City Initiatives as a subcommittee for no longer than a year from today.
I second.
And I'll take votes. Commissioner Inga,
Aye.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner McGuy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heschler,
Okay.
and Chair Kildorf.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
great. Thank you both for your volunteering. See, I did a subcommittee with Carol Wingate, and we had a lot of fun, actually, housing. So, I hope we have as much fun. New business, I don't think we have any, right? A report from Community Development Director,
Nothing to report at this time.
City Attorney's Office.
Nothing at this time, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry, I just want to let the commission know that we had presented to the city council kind of an update on the downtown specific plan. So we got some pretty good feedback from them. I think there was a lot of questions, and there's a lot of discussion, regarding some outdoor dining. I think they like the concept of having, actual standards, which you have all looked at. And as Michael indicated earlier, this will be coming back around. I think two of the biggest issues that did come up, and this is just mainly to alert you, nothing for you guys to discuss, because it will come back to you. But there was some hesitancy about the height along Main Street, along the southern portion south of Grand. And so they did provide us with some direction to look at lowering the height down to what it is currently, which is 45 feet. But then the other portion, the expanded portion that the specific plan area would encompass, the Rite Aid property and the Chase Bank property. Those, they didn't have an issue with the height, so I just want to alert you to that. And then the other thing that we'll also be reporting back to them and also going back to you with is with regards to the parking rates in terms of the ratio. We had gone down pretty significant in terms of our requirement, but they felt that we should do a parking survey of the other neighboring cities perhaps they kind of felt maybe we were still being a little too high. So we'll be looking at that and reporting back to them, and ultimately it'll be coming back to you for that recommendation. But just want to alert you to those two big key ticket items that came up during that discussion.
Eduardo, is that the in-lieu parking rates?
No, it's the actual parking ratio in terms of
The ratio.
the square footage of
Got it.
building, right, for the parking requirements, in other words.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you. Planning Commissioner comments. I have a couple, but if anybody else wants to go first.
Congratulations to the new subcommittee.
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further from me.
No comments?
It's, I guess, more questions brought on by the subcommittee conversation. So in driving down El Segundo Boulevard and then Smoky Hollow, it looks like a couple of those streets have recently converted to one-ways. And the question about the bolsters, are those temporary to get people comfortable? And there are just a great number of signs, which I appreciate because I wouldn't have known not to turn down those. So are those all permanent? Is that permanent signage?
It's a pilot program,
Yeah.
so my suspicion, and the cost was pretty minimal, so my suspicion is that this is all temporary. There was a significant aversion to do other improvements after what had happened on El
Yeah.
Segundo about a few, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And so there's, everything's very temporary so that it can be ripped up really quickly if the world ends with these changes. So
I mean,
it
the
is
angled
temporary.
parking feels very efficient and
Yeah.
like that's a good change. I just am curious if people know, I'm sure that everybody in that area was noticed, but is there anything, like, does the city ever send anything out to all residents that says, hey, just heads up, these streets are now?
I actually
One
wasn't
way.
aware myself that the installation had happened. I'll have to check to see. There was intention to do sort of the standard outreach via social media channels and all that. I know Public Works is working on direct mailers and notification to the businesses and owners who, own and work in that particular area. But I'll double check and get back to the commission.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
might be.
it is efficient. I did watch somebody insisting on turning, and it's like,
Despite the
I
three
want to-
signs.
Waze is telling me to turn, but the
Yeah.
sign tells me, and they were paralyzed with fear. So it'll take some time.
Well, when I was there was actually somebody assigned to that corner who
Oh.
was, it must have been like brand spanking new.
Yeah.
And so there was some fear about that.
Uh,
It's on the way to Grateful Dog, so if you're going down
That's
Franklin,
right.
which is why I go there. Two
Right.
streets, right? So,
It's about halfway down to 3/4 of the way down.
yeah. And question about the subcommittee made me think of the gateway sign. Do we know if that's where that is in the process? Talk about a subcommittee that existed for years and years and
I
years.
want all that time back in my life.
Yeah.
I don't have a good update. All I know is that the cost is not in alignment with what we had anticipated, and so our Public Works Director, Elias Hassoun, is working with a particular contractor to look at the scope and really try and get it down to sort of the bare minimum of what we need in order to hit the dollar amount that we're willing to spend on it.
Would one say it was designed before they had a budget?
I think it's a few things, inflation, cost of construction has just sort of blown everything up. And it was really it was an architect who took their best guess at a budget. And so there's nothing wrong with that architect's guess, but it was based on the information that they had on the time, at that time before inflation, before construction costs went up. And it was their best guess. And so, they made a recommendation based on the information they had, and then things changed.
Elias is going to be out there painting the sign.
That is a cost savings measure that he's probably considering. Knowing Elias, he's willing to chip in himself in order to save the city some money.
Well, somebody asked if they were going to add Little League World Series champions to then. I
There
said,
you go.
where is that sign anyway?
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening.
Right. I do have one comment, and this is for Public Works, and The four-way stop at Oak and Main was approved at City Council a week and a half ago. And literally Saturday, they put this, Public Works set it up. So kudos to the city that everybody in the area is so happy about it.
Yeah.
So it's, I appreciate that,
Yeah, feels safer, yeah, with everybody walking from school.
definitely. Right.
All right. Well, thank you all. I think that adjourns our meeting.